Hello and welcome to the Silverstripe screencast. In this tutorial, we're going to be talking about data relationships again, only this will be about the many-many relationship. So let's just go over what we're going to cover. First, we're going to create a new data object that we can manage and assign to a many-many relationship. Then we'll create some interface for managing that relationship. And lastly, we're going to pull that relational data into the template and render it. All right, let's turn our focus back to the article page now, and we'll see that each article is associated with many categories. This has just been static content for now. We're going to make this dynamic in the CMS. We can imagine that in the CMS we want a list of selectable categories, probably checkboxes that are offered to each article. The first thing we'll need to do is set up a place to manage the categories. There are several different ways you can do this. It really depends on what kind of user experience you want to create, but for now let's stick them on the article holder object so that conceivably another article holder page could provide its own set of distinct categories. We don't have two article holder pages, but just for future proofing, maybe someday there will be another article holder page and they can set up their own set of categories on each one. So here's our has many again. We'll call it categories, and it relates to article category. We've added our grid field, same stuff there. Now the only thing we don't have is that article category object. So we're going to create article category.php, and very, very simple data object here. One field is just a title, and of course it reciprocates back to the article holder. And we'll run dev build and see that we get a new table for article category. Now let's go into the CMS and edit that travel guides page in the CMS. And we have this new tab for categories. Let's just add a few sample categories. Okay, so now that we have some categories to work with, let's relate them to the articles. Articles have many categories, as we can see on the template, so it's reasonable to assume that we'll be using another has many, right? Not exactly. In this case, a has many is not really what we want. Remember that reciprocal has one that we used with has many? That declares that each related object can only belong to one parent. Once that relation is created, it can't be used anywhere else. So we don't want that behavior with categories. Once a category is claimed by an article, it should still be available to other articles, right? So therefore, articles have many categories, and categories have many articles. This is a many-many relationship. So we'll define the many-many variable in our article page, and it works just like the others. We'll call the relationship categories, relates to article category, and we'll run dev build, and we get a new table called article page underscore categories. This table is used to link the IDs of one table to the IDs of another. So optional but strongly recommended is that you reciprocate the many-many relationship on the article category object using belongs many-many. Now this variable does not create any database mutations, kind of like has many. It just provides a magic method on the object for getting its parent records. So in this case, we know that at some point we're going to need article category objects to get their articles, because our design includes a filter by category feature in the sidebar. So this is quite important. In the article category object, we'll just add belongs many-many articles, and of course we can refer back to article page. Now you may be wondering, if both sides of the relationship have many associated records, how do you know which one is many-many and which one is belongs many-many? Well, typically the object that contains the interface gets the many-many. In this case, we're adding categories to the articles using checkboxes on the article page. So article page gets the many-many. Again, the belongs many-many is just providing the convenience of an accessor method for getting the articles from within a category. So speaking of interface, we need to add some. So let's go into article page and we'll introduce the checkbox set field. So I'm adding it to my get CMS fields here, and we've got three distinct arguments. Two of them you've seen before. The first one, categories, is the name of the many-many relation that we're managing. Pretty straightforward. Of course, the label is just a label for the list of checkboxes. And so for the third argument, we're providing the source for the checkbox. This is going to be the list that you're checking off. So first things first, we have to go back to the parent object to get the categories. The categories are stored on the article holder, so we need to get the parent page. On any list, we can invoke map, And what map does is it maps two fields in key value pairs. So we want the ID mapped to the title. So this map will tell the checkboxes to save the ID to the relationship, but present the title field as the label for each checkbox. You can kind of think about this like the select element in HTML, where you have the option value that actually gets sent through the form, but the text in that option is the label. Note that the title, the second argument, can be any public method that's executable on the data object, which is really useful if you want computed values or you want to mix multiple fields together to create that label. You can create your own method that does that. Now, 99% of the time, this ID is going to be the first argument because relational data is all held together by IDs, and it's rare that you'd ever want to be saving something to the database that isn't ID. So let's go back into the CMS and edit an article under travel guides and just check off some categories and make sure they save. You can do this for a couple different articles if you want. So checkbox set field is a good go-to UI for most of your many relationships, but it doesn't scale very well. If we had 100 categories, this wouldn't be a pleasant experience for the user. For larger data sets, there is listbox field, which provides sort of a type ahead UI for associating records without displaying them all at once. Okay, now let's look at bringing all this stuff into the template. We're going to add a comma-separated list of categories to each article. So in articlepage.ss, we'll scroll down to where it says tags, and we're just going to loop categories, and we'll display the title of each one. And we can use the global template variable last to tell us whether we're in the last iteration of the loop, which will determine whether or not we show the comma. Also available here is $first, $even, $odd, and several others that are injected to every loop. $even and $odd are pretty useful for zebra striping your tables. So if we reload the page, this all looks great, but we're not done yet. The categories are displayed on articleholder.ss and homepage.ss in the recent articles section. So this is a lot of template syntax to keep replicating over and over again. We could put this into an include so it's more reusable, but I think it would be better if the article page objects could render their comma-separated list of categories themselves. So let's create a new method that does this. In article page, we'll create a method called categoriesList. Now by convention, if the method is supposed to be used on the template, you should use upper camel case. And remember this exists method, we used this before for the photo. So simply checking the result of this categories will not work because at worst it returns an empty data list object. Even though it's an empty object, it's still truthy. So this categories method never returns false. If we want to know true or false, we need to check exists. So this column method is very useful. On the list of article category objects, it will get us an array of all the values for a given column. So that saves us the trouble of looping through each category and just getting one field and yielding it out to an array. So we can update homepage.ss, articleholder.ss, and articlepage.ss to use this $categoriesList method. And we'll just go back to the browser and check all those pages and make sure that it's displaying correctly. Okay, that's all for this tutorial. Thank you for tuning in. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below.